I bet there's a lot of overlap between people who today are saying, my body, my choice, keep your laws off my body, and people who 10 minutes ago were for mask mandates and vax mandates, people who now are talking about privacy, who demanded that every American and Canadian reveal their personal health choices to clerks and doormen. I tell you, I'm dizzy from the acrobatics. What do you make of this?
Well, yeah, it's the sort of hypocrisy I've been talking about the entire time. The only thing I disagree with your statement there was until 10 minutes ago, I think these people are still pro-mask mandate and pro-vaccine mandate. I don't think they've changed at all, or I don't think they're willing to recognize the hypocrisy of their position. And actually, one really interesting thing I think is worth pointing out is, I mean, the COVID vaccine has not been tested. There have been no randomized controlled studies conducted on pregnant women. And yet these people were fine with mandating vaccines for pregnant women. But now all of a sudden they care about pregnant women's right to choose. And, I should make clear, I actually, I'm probably in the anti-mandate camp. I'm a rare person who is actually pro-choice philosophically speaking. I don't think Roe v. Wade was a legally sound decision, so this doesn't bother me that much. And again, this is assuming that this is the real decision. We don't actually know. This is an unprecedented leak, and it may not end up being the decision that comes down from the court.
Yeah, it was dated in February, which is interesting because I guess I never really thought carefully about how these decisions are crafted and how there's a back and forth amongst the judges and their clerks. This may be the first time that a leak like this, at least in modern times, has happened. And it feels a little bit like a political operation designed to switch the conversation nationally, designed to undermine political support for the Supreme Court, maybe to set the stage for Joe Biden to pack the court. I don't know. It feels like it's a challenge to the court itself. I mean, the Chief Justice today says he's going to hire marshals to look into the leak. Boy, I hope it didn't come from an actual judge. Hopefully it was just a clerk, but that would be quite something. What do you make of the move to break I mean, listen, it was interesting to me that Justice Scalia and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who were so opposite ideologically, had a genuine friendship during their whole, I think there is a collegiality on that court, despite ideological differences. This feels like that was smashed a bit today.
Yeah, well, I think times have changed too since then, but I suspect it was a clerk, and I think there are two interpretations. One is that it's a pro-choice clerk who saw themselves as sort of a hero for breaking this and possibly being able to change the course of things by doing so, or getting Democrats very riled up about it. The other interpretation is it's a right-wing clerk who sought to sort of solidify the decision by leaking it. I tend to think it's probably the first one. That's just sort of what my gut tells me. I might be wrong. And it could be entirely different. I would be really surprised if it was a judge, really surprised.
Yeah, well, I hope that's not the case. There's a lot of institutions that have debased themselves over the last 2 years. The Supreme Court, I think, has actually conducted itself fairly admirably. I think both sides of the aisle might say that. If it were a judge, God forbid, I think that would shatter a lot of trust in the institution. Now, I see immediately that the deep blue states, California, for example, they're saying, well, they're going to fill the gap right away. I think that's true. I think Gavin Newsom, he mentioned he wanted to make a ballot initiative. I wouldn't be surprised if in the blue states those pass handily. And I mean, what I read from this ruling is the judges are saying, sorry, we can't do this. We don't have the power to do this. We have to be on guard for our own ideological enthusiasms. Let the states and their people do this. And Gavin Newsom of California is saying, yeah, we'll do it. That's sort of how it's supposed to work under the Constitution, isn't it? So if you had all the blue states saying we're going to do this, and you have the red states saying, well, we're not going to do it, or we're going to limit it in this way, 50 different states, 50 different approaches. I think that's the American way.
I think so. And that's one reason that even though, as I said, I'm philosophically pro-choice, I'm not upset by this at all if it turns out to be the real decision. I actually think I've always disagreed with Roe v. Wade's legal reasoning. I don't think it's very sound. Essentially, Roe v. Wade said that there's a right to privacy in the Constitution that recognizes the right to abortion, even though it's not enumerated. And I just can't get on board with that. Now, I do agree with that in certain other contexts. So I don't know if you guys have anything similar, but we have, what are called unenumerated rights. They're considered so fundamental that the Constitution doesn't explicitly mention them, but we understand them to exist, such as the right to parent your own child. Now, if a state came in, a state came down with a law and said, we can take your kids away anytime if we think it's in their best interest, I think most people would agree, well, the Constitution doesn't allow that. But that's, sort of fundamentally different from abortion, which is controversial, has always been controversial, hasn't even been, historically has been conducted in certain ways, hasn't always been possible in a safe way. So I think to read that into the Constitution in the same way, for example, the right to parent your own children is just not, it's not really honest. And so it's really a political thing. The decision was political. And so I actually don't think overturning it is the worst thing.
Yeah. I learned a lot from the ruling. I mean, it was a lot of history about the history of abortion and the law. And I think the reason why Justice Alito went to such lengths is that these, discovering new freedoms tucked away in the Constitution that were not enumerated. You mentioned the right to parent your own kids. It has to be so open and so obvious and so historically, the backdrop to our lives that no one could possibly for a second say, hey, you're trying to smuggle in your own agenda. Something so obvious, we didn't bother to mention it because, of course, that's the way it is. And I think, what struck me by the depth of historical, here's what happened with the law of abortion, here's how abortion is being treated historically. I think that was the justice's way of saying, look, this is not one of those super obvious things that, was too obvious to put into print. Right. This is a very novel thing, and it should be left to legislators in the states. I don't know if anyone is taking that nuanced position other than you. I mean, I just sitting here, I just got an email from the ACLU. I guess I'm on their list. They're fundraising. They're very excited. They're going to make a mint off this, and the Democrats finally are changing the subject from the price of gas or from, supply chain issues. I think a lot of people are getting their itches scratched. They're happy to be back on this turf again politically.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, one thing that worries me, as I said in the tweets, is that, a lot of people, this is a very important issue to a lot of people, a lot of libertarians and a lot of moderate Democrats and even moderate Republicans who I think were very sick of the COVID restrictions, did not want their kids in masks, didn't want to be forced to take vaccines, and were ready to vote Republican. And now maybe we'll think twice. So that's the way in which I see this could be a problem.
Yeah, I think you could be right. This will definitely be emphasized. I mean, the media is going wall to wall on this, as you would think, because it really is a stunning thing to have someone within the close circle. It's almost like the Vatican. It's almost like a conclave of the cardinals, and someone leaked, the vote for the new pope or something. I mean, that's how it looks from the outside. What's interesting is that there are some states that are very much against abortion. I think I saw a clip from Joe Biden saying this is too important to be left to the public. Well, there's different publics in different places. Yeah. I think there are some states, West Virginia, where Joe Manchin's from, where pro-life is the view of the people, and others like San Francisco. I mean, that's most of California. It'll be interesting to me. I think people who want abortion restrictions will get them, and people who don't won't get them. And who knows? I mean, I think you're going to see a race to fill the gap. I wonder if this will still be a hot issue in November if all the blue states go ahead and enact their own rules.
Oh, I think it will be. I mean, it's such people feel so strongly about it. So I think it will continue to be an issue. I think that Democrats will still be upset if it's illegal in red states, and the red states will be upset that the Democrats are allowing it. I don't actually think this issue is really going to go away. But I do think that this is the best possible solution to it. And another very interesting thing about it is that the court very, very, very rarely explicitly overrules precedent. And it did so here. It said, we are overruling Roe v. Wade. We think it was wrong. And in very sort of scathing terms, which I haven't seen before, actually. The closest example is Plessy versus Ferguson that was overruled in Brown versus Board of Education about segregation in schools. But other than that, the sort of explicit and scathing overruling is really rare.
That was an excerpt from my daily TV-style show called The Ezra Levant Show. Each weekday, I do a monologue on the news of the day. Then I interview a fascinating guest. I read some fan mail or hate mail, depends on which I like more. And we end with a video of the day. You can get it all at rebelnewsplus.com.